Are you just recycling the same old blues licks over and over? If so, I get it, because I'm actually guilty of this too at times, and it makes sense how we fall into this trap. We learn a few licks and we love them, we play them so much that over time they just feel so comfortable that we don't really venture out. And venturing out would mean learning a bunch of scales and figuring out which notes work over which chords, which seems confusing, but it really doesn't have to be. In this lesson, we're going to keep things nice and simple by leveraging chords that you already know. And by the end of the lesson, you'll be able to play some bluesy phrases using notes right next to those same chord shapes. And the best part to me is that this works really well with the blues. So let's dig in. Most of us start out playing acoustic blues in the open position, but we can easily connect to the next position up the neck. And in Tuesday Blues 465, we did this with an E chord, and now I'm going to show you how to do this with a familiar A chord. Let's start with this A chord, the open 5th string, and then the 2nd fret on the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd string, and then the open 1st. Right, your basic open position A chord. And we can take this and make two little modifications to get a really bluesy flavor on this and get ourselves into an A7. We can do that first by picking up the ring finger and playing the open 3rd string. So you might refinger this way so that we have open, 2nd, open, 2nd, open. But also, we can play that 1st string at the 3rd fret for another G note. The open 3rd string is a G note, so we can kind of double up on that and get a bluesy A7 chord here. This is one that we're going to be working around, coming from our open A, turn it into a 7th chord this way or this way. Both perfect for the blues. You probably already know this one. It's in so many of our favorite strum-alongs, and it's perfect for acoustic blues once you make those couple of modifications. But now let's take a look at another shape that we can call the long A shape. You can also play your open position A chord as a bar at the 2nd fret across strings 4, 3, and 2, and just skip the 1st string. But what we can do on that 1st string is reach up and play the A note at the 5th fret. That gives us the long A. And yeah, it's quite a stretch, and if that's difficult for you, then feel free to just visualize that top note and not actually play them together, right? Work up to the stretch if you can, but if that's not happening, just know that that top note is an A. That's going to come in really handy when we start using this chord shape as an anchor point for bluesy licks. But this is the long A. See how this stretches out along the fretboard? That's certainly why we call it the long A, but here's where things get interesting. Instead of just strumming these shapes, we're going to use them as home base for our blues solos. We'll explore the useful notes that are right next door to each of these shapes, and that way you can focus on just the notes you need versus getting lost in what seems like a random spot on the fretboard. Let's start with our open A shape and find those useful next door notes. We'll talk a little bit about intervals here, and if you want to go deeper, check out Tuesday Blues number 418. I highly recommend getting used to thinking in intervals because that helps you change keys and really know where you are and how things fit together on the fretboard. But even if you don't know the interval names and the construct behind it, we're going to cover their locations so you can create some bluesy licks right here today. We'll find our first next door note right here in this voicing of the A7. This G note on top is the flat 7. That's what gives this the dominant 7th sound, and we can use this in our licks. So that's our first next door note. Then we can also drop down a fret to play the major 6. That's an F sharp, and then the perfect 5th is the open 1st string. So 3 notes right there, right under our fingers while holding this A7 chord. Then on the 2nd string, there's actually quite a lot we can do. We can sneak up to the 3rd fret and play the perfect 4th, or we could even drop down to the 1st fret and play the minor 3rd. It's a minor 3rd. You might recognize it from your A minor chord. So in the blues, we do this dance between minor 3rd and major 3rd quite often. So that's one to definitely keep your eye on. All right. The other thing we can do on the second string is actually play it open. So that gives us the open, the C sharp, and even the D that we can play along that second string, depending on what you're going for there. Switching over to the third string, we know that we can play the A note on the third string second fret because that's in an A major chord, and we can play the open third string as well. So we've got first string, we've got the second string, just playing the notes kind of out of order, but in a way that might get you thinking about what you can do with it. And then of course the A on the third string, and then the open G. See how many great notes are right under your fingers? And these really aren't just random notes. They're exactly what you need for classic blues phrases. And the same thing works with our long A shape. Let's take a look. From our long A shape, let's work our way down the first string to give ourselves a break from this stretch and find the next door notes. We already know we can drop down to the G on the third fret. That was in the other shape right here. And it's a great little interplay between these two notes on top. So then the other thing that we can do on the first string is lift up and play that major 6, the F sharp, under the bar, second fret. And we do the same finger pattern on the second string to play our 5th E, our 4th D, and our major 3rd C sharp. If we drop down to the third string and play the 5th fret here, we've got the minor 3rd. Remember, we do that minor 3rd, major 3rd move in the blues quite a lot. So it's handy to put that one in here as well. And of course, 1 fret down is the major 2nd, and then 2 frets from there is our root A. See how these notes are right where you need them, right next to the chord shapes. Each one of the notes here can help us get that bluesy sound that we're after. Now that we have our notes mapped out, let's turn them into real blues licks. But keep this in mind as we do. A lot of players try to cram so many notes into their solos. I do that too. I might even do it in this particular lesson, but some of my favorite blues is about saying more with less. So I'm going to try to show you some licks that really say something with just a few notes. Let's start with one over the open A shape. For this lick, we're playing it out of this open A7 position, and we're reaching up to the G on the 3rd fret of the first string. That's our first next door note. Then we drop down to the 2nd fret and pull off to the open. Then play the 2nd string right there under the chord. We haven't released the chord yet. And then play the open 1st string. So you can see why I think of this as playing that little lick out of this A7 shape. Then we reach up to the D, then down to that minor 3rd on the 1st string. So that's the 3rd fret, 1st, and then you can give that little bluesy push there, a little tiny blues bend to that note as we wrap up with the root. Now, you don't have to keep the bass going. I want to do that so we keep our beat here as I demonstrate this. And another thing that you don't have to do is hold the chord shape. You could also free yourself from the chord shape, still visualize that it's there, but play the lick like this. That might be a little more comfortable for you, but if you do it that way, I still want to encourage you to visualize yourself as playing out of this chord shape. I want you to strengthen the relationship between this chord shape and the bluesy notes that are right around it. Sounds like the blues to me. How about you? But now we're going to try something with the long A shape. This one is a good example of visualizing the chord shape and playing licks out of the chord shape versus holding it the whole time. You could play this lick by holding the long A shape, but we could help ourselves out here and release that stretch and just get up into this position. And you can play it with perhaps a more comfortable fingering, the ring finger in my case, as I jump up and start this lick off with the A note on the 5th fret, 1st string. So the first move is that jump, followed by a little tiny blues bend on the G. That's the flat 7 at the 3rd fret, 1st string. Then I play the E on the 2nd string, 5th fret, the F sharp at the 2nd fret, right? Remember, we're playing this out of this position, so that makes this a comfortable note choice, right? A familiar note choice, a next door note choice. Then the E, the D on the 2nd string before this really cool move, where we bend the minor 3rd, another microtonal bend, and then land back on the root. That's happening 3rd string, 5th fret, and 2nd fret. To me, these simple moves, they just plain work. And here's the really fun part. We can combine these ideas to create longer licks that flow up and down the neck. Here's an example connecting these two positions in A using my out and back approach. We call this the out and back because we start in one chord position, we move out of it into another, and then we come back. And in our case, we're going to start with the long A, back to the open position A, and then back to the long A. All right, so what we're doing is playing this over an A dead bass. I'm doing that to keep time. That's optional if you want to really focus on just getting the notes under your fingers around these chord shapes, then you can omit that. But doing that, I'm going to play on the and of 1. I'm going to do this move out of my long A. I'm playing the root note on the 1st string and then dropping down to the flat 7, that 3rd fret, 1st string G note. But I'm moving. I'm going to do a very quick slide there. You can do it slower if you want to, but I'm doing it quickly. Down to the F sharp and then the open. And that open string is really what gets us into the open position, right? That's the connective tissue between this out and back idea here in this part of this sequence. Because with that open string, I'm changing positions and I'm going to target the D note on the 2nd string, 3rd fret, pull off, and then down to my A, and then the open 3rd string and back for a little pull off and back action here. From there, it's the minor 3rd, the open 1st, the D, that's the 4th, the open 1st again, and that serves as another connection point where now I can shift my chord thinking to the long A with that ringing. Another one of those quick slide backs from the 3rd to the 2nd fret on the 1st string. And then finally, really thinking hard about the long A here as I play that top note on the 5th fret of the 1st string and then finish up with that flat 7. What I love about this approach is that it meets you where you are as a player. The licks you're going to create will naturally fit your own level. So start simple and play these little ideas using the chord shapes and their next door notes. But as you grow as a player, you can take this idea to new levels. Think back to Two-Step Blues number 465 when we explored connecting the positions in E. Well, now we can take that and combine it with our work here today and piece this together into a longer part. An entire solo, really. And by the way, premium members are going to have access to the example that I'm about to play in the extended cut lesson, and that's going to drop later this week. Here's what I came up with. Earlier I mentioned that having these notes under your fingers will let you create licks that are perfect for your level, but the thing is, knowing where to find the notes is really just half the battle. Click right here to watch this video next to learn 3 simple techniques that will help your blues playing go from stiff to soulful. I'll see you there. Until then, practice smart and play on.